As a bankruptcy firm, Mitchell, Cunningham, and Bowling realizes many people are worried about their finances. We're here to guide you through the next steps to restart your life with easy video appointments. New clients don't have to leave home to get information about becoming debt-free. Also, convenient in-office appointments are available at the low cost of $340 upfront for a Chapter 13. You can be on your way to being debt-free. Contact Mitchell, Cunningham, and Bowling today or visit our website at mcdebtfree.com. We are here to help you.
Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 6.
Welcome back in here to Mississippi Live Weather at 6. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday evening. It was a little cool today. Nobody's going to say that later this week, as we have a lot more warmth on the way as we progress throughout the next couple of days. I think warm and humid, though sticky might be pushing a little bit. This is Mississippi, but the stickiness factor, that humidity, something that will probably yield more thunderstorms. Now, those are more likely later this week. I think we'll have the first of those chances on Thursday, much more likely Friday, and exiting by the time we go into Saturday. But I think there's just enough around that we'll probably have some severe weather across the state of Mississippi, including potentially here in the northern part of the state. And how do you do? Our meteorologist gave me in with a pun, but dew points, important factor for us to determine whether or not storms are possible. We'll talk a little bit about how that all works, come up here in just a few minutes. As you'll notice here this evening, though, at 7 p.m., we're 53, 50 by 10 p.m., 49 by 1 o'clock in the morning, and down into probably the low 50s to begin the first part of early Tuesday morning. And yes, that is a percentage there. The first of our rain chances, though limited in amount, arrives for tomorrow, but chances get a lot better later on this week in particular. And so as we look outside in Cleveland at this time, 63 is that temperature. That dew point there, one of the things that we're watching in the upper 40s at this time there in the Cleveland area, on some southerly winds starting to bring a little more moisture in. And you can kind of tell, again, we have a bit of a contrast there showing up with that dew point still around 46 and slightly drier air in the eastern part of the state in the West Point area, as we show those mostly clear skies, other than a few high thin clouds out there at this time. And out in Aberdeen, 50 the temperature. Hey, good evening to y'all there in Aberdeen. By the way, I do wonder if that reporting station is actually working. I'm thinking that Monroe County reporting station might be down. That seems a little bit cooler than most. That's close to where we'll be for low temperatures tonight. But I'm very thankful I was able to talk to the good folks there at Rotary in Aberdeen earlier on today. We'll post a picture about that on social media a little bit later on tonight. But a beautiful evening there in Monroe County as well. 52 current temperature Starkville, 50 degrees, 53 degrees in Tupelo. So we do have some spots out there still low 60s, but it looks like those low 50s actually closer to actual numbers. Change from yesterday, much more significant change up to the north, where we're almost 15 to 20 degrees warmer than yesterday, but everybody in the Magnolia State warmer than we were on Sunday. This is one of our critical factors, though, going forward, dew point. It's a measure of moisture based on the same scale as the temperature. When we start looking for more humid air, we start looking down closer to the coast. Low 60s, not something of significant concern, but the wind set gets closer to 70, and I think later this week it could. That's where storms become more likely. But that is still largely well to the south of us, as fuel remains limited at this point, but becomes much more plentiful later this week. Mama Justice Doppler radar at this instant only showing a few high and thin clouds on those latest scans, what we call cirrus clouds, kind of moving through our skies at this moment. And looking back toward the north and west, a couple of different storm systems here. One that's going to be the first front. This just doesn't have much in the way of colder air behind it. And then another one behind that will be the first of the rain chances that become a little more significant on Thursday. The track of these is going to be important, and the timing as well, because I think the strongest is farther northwest than either of those. The first of these kind of swooping like this in a way that will still have some thunderstorm chance with it. And the first one kind of more like that, they kind of cross. And so what does that matter? Well, the question really becomes, how much colder and drier air is there behind this first one here? The more dry air, the hopefully greater limitation that could place on some of our storm chances. But I think in the next couple of days, there's just not a lot of storm chances to deal with there, at least initially. Some more active weather, including some wintry weather north of this system. And it's kind of what we call a clipper front. See how it kind of moves from the northwest to the southeast? It does kind of unfold this front associated with it, but the air behind it's just not that much colder. It's just somewhat drier. You can tell the dry just looking at the cloud cover difference on either side of that front there, right? And so as that kind of comes in, it could initially suppress some of the moisture, at least that will eventually fuel more active weather and storms later this week. But ahead of that, you can see some spotty green, and we'll look a lot more at that zoomed in on Futurecast here in a minute as we're tracking, again, some lighter variety showers. So over the next 12 to 24 hours, we're going about 51 there to begin the first part of early morning on your Tuesday, 57 by 9 a.m., 64 by noon, and 69 degrees as we head toward afternoon. Again, 69 for this date in January is only 3 away from a record high temperature. So obviously really close to record levels.
Frozen pipes can cause serious damage. That's why Absolute Restoration is giving away free faucet covers to our community while supplies last. Installing them is easy. Just slide the foam sleeve over your outdoor faucet and secure it snugly. Also remember to disconnect hoses, open cabinet doors under sinks, and let faucets drip during extreme cold. Call or text to check availability, and from our family to yours, please stay warm and protected.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. But only you can prevent wildfires.
People tell me how lucky my daughter is to have been adopted. But really, we're the lucky ones. Learn more at adoptuskids.org.
This portion of Mississippi Live Weather is presented by Little's Jewelers.
Right now, from the Room to Room Weather Center, here's Mississippi's Chief Meteorologist, Matt Lobhon.
I got a little antsy on the click there as we headed it over the commercial break. Would have definitely teased this, but I know a lot of folks probably excited about this. SEC football continues. Again, appreciate Carl Hogan Toyota for sponsoring our SEC football network, our SEC football forecast as we've gone throughout this fall, winter now, and continuing deeper into January. We are looking at a kind of early look here at Ole Miss and Miami, that forecast there. Glendale, Arizona. Isn't it funny that there's a limited chance for a few showers? Of course, non-factor because of that stadium there, but the desert might get a little bit of moisture from this storm system approaching us later on this week. Low 60s for first play temperatures. In fact, it's reasonable, honestly, that we will be warmer than that here in Mississippi. How often do you get to say warmer in Mississippi than Arizona? Well, we are going to be there this time around. And rain chances definitely peaking as this storm system comes in. Again, very limited, I'd say, on your Tuesday. Not impossible to see something. That first front comes through. We're drier for Wednesday, and then rain chances start shooting up for Thursday. Definitely Friday, the time frame. But the reason there's some wiggle room here is we're still negotiating between two main projections on the timing of this system. So again, we're looking at the potential, I think, later this week, in particular for your Friday, for some severe thunderstorms. I'd say wind gusts, the greatest confidence level at this point here we will see as thunderstorms kind of pop up. Some could exceed 60 miles per hour. I'd say confidence remains still fairly low, but a possibility to see a brief spin-up tornado out of this depending on how it evolves. Limited hail threat, not expecting much there, and flooding threat. I don't think we have a great enough duration event for that to be the case here. But certainly, as you can see on our latest on our severe weather risk for your Friday, showing really the majority of us under that level 2 risk. And we only do level 2 risks on day 5, which is technically in the forecast terms, the way we look at Friday is day 5. Day 4, it's only level 2, and then we start getting into level 1 behind that. But this represents a fairly confident area of seeing active weather and potentially severe weather for Friday as that storm system kind of moves into and through the area. So we're going to be watching this closely. We think some expansion is possible as we work to figure out the amount of fuel. And of course, that's one of the things Gabe and I will be talking about here in a couple of moments. School bus forecast for tomorrow. Thankfully, the school bus is going to get there at normal time for tomorrow. Low 50s for pickup temperatures, upper 60s by the time we're picking kids up from school. Appreciate IMPC for sponsoring our school bus forecast. And I'm sure a lot of the kids and parents glad that it's time to get back into the swing of things there at school. Futurecast showing things remaining dry as we go into tonight. Only a few, high and thin clouds, the main story here. These, again, made up of the ice crystals, fairly widespread out there. So while it looks like it's really cloudy, more than anything, that cloud cover is just, fairly high and thin clouds at this point, all the way throughout the overnight hours, the likelihood of what we'll see. No precipitation coming from that. You will, though, start to see the first little bits of green show up in South Alabama. That's a sign of that moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, and a few more of those bits of green get closer to us as we progress into your Tuesday, as rain chances become a little bit more likely. So upper 40s, low 50s are normal this time of year. 30-year average coming in around 34, so we're going to end up being obviously well above that. The 49 Water Valley and Grenada will be about 49 degrees, Houston 50 in Starkville, and coming in about 49 for New Albany, as well as the Tupelo area. Kind of a sign we're still adding some moisture. We do show a few showers out there. Hamilton, Alabama toward Ewan, out toward Fayette and Coleman. Those again with that returning moisture on the east side of this front. So again, Gulf of Mexico kind of open up here. And if you watch closely, you'll be able to see even the bits of green kind of working their way north like this, right? That's one of the signs, again, moisture trying to return ahead of this next storm system. But notice it's not kind of a direct feed right out of the Gulf. It's kind of more at an angle. It's one of the things that just doesn't get enough moisture out of here before this first front comes through. So while, again, I think we'll have some lighter showers, maybe something that's kind of drizzly sort of showers, this is not going to add up to much in the rain gauge here for your Tuesday. In fact, if you pick up 1/10 of an inch, you really exceeded expectations on this. Not expecting a lot. It's just more nuisance rainfall. So it will be about 73 for Greenville and Belzona for highs on your Tuesday. Coming down 72 Grenada, Eupora, 71 degrees in Houston, and 68 New Albany, and 69 degrees there in the Tupelo area. Again, 53 is our normal, and we're probably within a couple of a record high. So this is the first of 3 fronts that we're watching over the course of this week. And a lot of times when you get so many fronts, it becomes really hard to get moisture up and in this area. This is largely going to keep it fairly south of us, at least initially here. That's why I think our dry day of the week, the most likely to be dry day, will be cloudy and maybe marginally cooler than tomorrow, and that will end up being your Wednesday. I say that there's just not much cold air behind it. As you can see, this is similar to low temperatures projected for tomorrow morning, and this is behind a front the day after that. So again, cool up here north to the near the Tennessee state line. Senatobia, it's 46, 45 Holly Springs, but 49 Eupora, 51 in Starkville, 51 Columbus, and about 53 there in the Louisville area. And so though that front kind of moved through and we're at least initially dry here on your Wednesday, we're kind of waiting for this kind of quick moving high pressure center to get east. As soon as this gets east of us, you're going to see the tail end of this front start kind of traversing back up to the north, kind of moving more north into the area by that point in time. So we still have a little bit of time before that happens here, but we're thinking it'll probably end up being late in the day. You can even see where I think we've over-exaggerated the position here, because if you watch this little bit, like now you see this kind of hill of cloud cover that we have here, that's a sign, again, that moisture trying to move northward and kind of the backside of this front. So there's going to be kind of a warm front that we place on here in between. That'll be the beginning of more unstable air, more fuel kind of moving back into our region. Hold on, zipped right past it. Let me get back to that real quick. Mid-70s, we show Greenwood and Kosciuszko for highs on Wednesday. As you can see, the record is 75, so we're going to be within a couple of degrees of that record in most locations out there, about 73 in Grenada, 74 in Kosciuszko. If this initial front is even just a little bit weaker, it wouldn't at all be shocking to have us closer to the mid-70s up for Tupelo as well as New Albany. That's probably pushing it a little bit, but not an impossibility there. Okay, so as we progress into and through your Wednesday night, again, just cloud cover out there, no precipitation associated with that 9, 10, 11 o'clock. But you can see those dots now starting to pick up a little greater concentration out of the south. This is that moisture starting to return. Winds starting to pick up. The first of our shower chances, mainly to the north and west of us, early there in your Thursday. We show a few more as we go into Thursday midday. This is all part of a system up here toward the plains. This system's really going to do the dirty work of bringing a lot more moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico. Because if you just look at those dots there representing the winds flowing northward, there's a lot more of them flowing into this system here. And so this is kind of priming the atmosphere because there's, believe it or not, one more system behind this, and that's the one, the kind of mid-level system kick through here and kind of attach this and be the forcing mechanism that brings us more of those storm chances on Friday. Let's bring it back in here toward the Mississippi shot on this. These showers, though, as you can see, all relatively light to maybe a few rumbles as we look here toward Thursday, 6 p.m. We show some of those Jonesboro back out here toward Pine Bluff and toward the Greenville area. Maybe some rumbles there. At this point, we expect severe weather chances, if we're going to see them, probably back to the north and west of us on the plains on your Thursday. Timing is critical on this. As we look toward Friday, you see a lot of moisture, again, coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, really ahead of this frontal system. There'll be kind of an extra push behind this to really kind of fully kick it through, but kind of a prefrontal sort of wave out here trying to produce some showers and maybe some rumbles during the first part of your Friday. As we progress through Friday here, as you can see, more thunderstorms down there into Texas. Why? Let me get out of the way of this. Let's see if we can get it all in the same shot for a moment. So this is where there's a ton more moisture, Gulf of Mexico, more fuel. So confidence is obviously very good that we're going to have fuel down closer to the coast, and then that could enhance some of these storms as they lift northward. But as we're looking at the very latest version of Futurecast here, our strike model come through, one thing you'll notice, and I start running out of data by around noontime, and this is a new version versus what we showed you at 5 o'clock. So I'm going to dig into this, and it's going to kind of jump around so we can look at timing so I can force the model to go a little farther in advance. One thing I do notice is this has some single cell storms with it. And again, I think the timing's still a little early on this, but I mean, that looks like a little rotating thunderstorm close to Ridgeland there, some individual storms with this. So again, that's where that limited tornado threat shows up. And yeah, we have a couple of those up here in North Mississippi. There's just a question as to whether or not there's enough fuel, high enough dew points to make that a thing. Let's go and pop this out of play mode. Let's going to add some time in this. Give me a moment behind the scenes. I'm going to take that, see if I can force it all the way to 6 p.m. There we go. And let's see if we can get a little extra, squeeze a little extra data out of it. There we go. And I'm going to pull off that front. Obviously, we know we have a front in the area. I don't know I necessarily completely agree with the positioning on that. So first thing I can tell you on this strike model here is it goes tons of rainfall all over the place. When you have lots of rainfall like this, you typically can't concentrate it in the biggest bubbles. Think about this. When you go to blow bubbles, right? If you go, whew, you just get a million little bubbles, right? If you want to blow the one big bubble, you have to be slow and deliberate and concentrate all of your oxygen on that one, right? Or all carbon dioxide you're exhaling. Either way, you have to concentrate it all on the one balloon. Or bubble, I should say. Well, when you have this many showers around, you're not concentrating on that one bubble. So individual storms in this scenario would make me a little more concerned about a tornado threat here. That's less of what this shows. Now, again, I will tell you, our strike model, I still think is a little fast. It does agree with what we call GFS or American model on timing. The European model, frankly, I am a European apologist when it comes to that model because it is almost always more accurate than the American model and has to do a little bit with the physics, and there's some other things to go with it. It just does better. And so I believe that timing a little better, and that would have all of this occurring, but instead of 6 p.m. being out here close to the Alabama state line, it'd be farther north and west from that. Let me see if I can model for you where I would place that, and I think I should be able to offset that. I would say it's reasonable, and I'll bring Gabe in here because I saw him walk there a second ago. I think it's just as reasonable that this could be about this far west, Gabe, you think, by the time we roll towards 6 p.m. Friday?
I would say that's more accurate because it's going to be an afternoon into the late night hours. I don't think we wrap this up before the sun sets like some of our model projections are wanting to do, but yeah, I would expect that positioning to be a little bit better with where we're aligned here at Mississippi Live Weather.
Okay. Did you see I shrunk? I got small.
I was going to mention.
Sorry about that. I changed my resolution between broadcasts. Let's see if we can. Whoop. Look at that. I grew.
Like magic.
If only it was that easy, right? Okay. I'm not going to click save on that so that we don't have that position. But I mean, it's not inconceivable. What I do think it does do a good job with, Gabe, though, is storm mode. Because if you look at it, it's a QLCS, right? And there are certain spots in that line where there's possibility, a little rotation back out there close to Greenwood. I mean, a few spots in that, and mainly strong winds. I'd say that it does a pretty good job with. Agree?
Yes, I would agree with that. And what I also like is the magnitude of the rainfall as well. You got that strong leading edge with some heavy downpours, and that's where that flash flooding concern is definitely there. But even some heavy downpours on the backside of this, you know, the Memphis area over in DeSoto County is prone to getting some flash flood advisories and warnings. I think we could be looking at that once again for Friday as well. So I don't want to breeze over the flash flood threat. I think that's just another thing that we need to keep in mind whenever we head into that Friday threat.
You're absolutely right. And you know, if you get that initial wave to really kind of set up, I think, again, the flooding risk could become more of a factor as well. Appreciate that, Gabe. As we're going to bring it back here into the mobile room-to-room weather center for a moment, and I'm going to kind of continue the presentation from where we had it there. We're going to kind of pick things up with what we call the jet stream. It's a river of fast-moving air in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and it kind of shows a bit on this pattern, and part of the reason why I think it plays out the way it does. So we have this big dip, and I'm going to have to move this side. So the big dip we have out west here is really what's going to provide some extra fuel for this. But you notice how there's kind of some other stuff kind of hanging off the backside out there, other little waves associated with that. And so as that kind of kicks into our area, it throws out kind of this initial wave there on Thursday, but then the whole thing kind of kicks through as we go into your Friday. Okay, so it might, and again, this is one of those nerd things I need to kind of show you because I do think that there's value in this. I'm going to go back and I'm going to take it out of play mode because there's just one, that first, I don't know if you can kind of see it here, right? Kind of this extra wave right there. I want you to watch how that gets absorbed. And this is our American model. And again, not my favorite one, but you see how it's just kind of hanging on the backside there Wednesday. And then does that get shoved forward in a way that the model is not high enough resolution to really kick out? Because sometimes that a short wave like that will get picked up, get carried into the flow, and then that could be the thing that takes us from maybe some storms to, hey, we have severe storms and tornadoes. So that's one of the things, one of the factors, one of the questions that we're watching very closely over the next couple of days related to this. Here's a look at that 7-day forecast. No question about this. We're upper 60s. We are pretty warm for your Tuesday as well as Wednesday. Rain chances were about 10% on your Tuesday. So again, we're not completely dry, but most of the showers should be relatively light. We're 70 by Wednesday afternoon. We're 72 as we look toward Thursday. Rain coverage 20% on your Thursday and up to 60% for Friday. Again, timing remains a bit of a question. It's somewhere perhaps from late morning through late night, depending on which of the projections you kind of believe at that time frame there for your Friday. We're going to be watching things very closely and giving you updates as we go throughout the week as we gain confidence on how this ends up playing out. But I do think that there's a tornado risk potentially out of this. And because of that, now is the time to be thinking about weather call. Apparently, I'm going to have to adjust my shape on all these here. So I'm just going to hop in like this here for a moment. Weather call does have a cost with it. It just is what it is because sending phone messages cost money, the same reason you still pay for a phone bill, right? And so highly recommend that you have this personalized tornado warning system for yourself, because whether it's tornadoes or severe thunderstorms, it'll let you know if you're in the danger zone. So it gives you a phone call. A phone call matters because alerts get ignored. I've probably had 15 alerts over the course of this broadcast, and I've ignored every one. But if my phone call from my wife came through, it'd bust right through, and we'd be talking right now, or I'd send it back to Gabe. So phone notifications matter, and that's the reason we talk about weather call. Okay, coming up in 60 seconds, what do we do? I think that's what he said. Gabe is going to be talking about how the dew point, the fuel, is so critical in any setup, but especially when we start talking about severe weather here in 60 seconds. As Mississippi Live Weather continues here from the Room to Room Weather Center.
What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete. But it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen at adoptuskids.org.
March 24th, 2023 was a normal Friday. You know, we knew the weather was not good, but we needed to take shelter, and we didn't have shelter. My husband and almost 2-year-old daughter, Ethan and Riley, they did lose their lives in the storm. We're still recovering from it. We'll always be recovering from it. Matt Lawpon cares about the community. He's not just there to collect a paycheck. I feel like Matt Lawpon has proven himself trustworthy.
Okay, so where do you get a severe weather threat like this? That's one of the things that comes back to fuel and all the other components. And that's where our meteorologist Gabe Maynor is trying to tell us what to do, how to do. What was it? What was your pun?
How do you do?
How do you do? I should have looked it up. See, don't ever let me tease you. But Gabe is talking about the dew point in particular and why it matters.
Well, and we're telling you how do you do, but it's also what do you do. That's what we're going to be discussing as we head through this week with this severe weather risk in place. Now, as Matt was mentioning, that level 2 risk does encompass a large portion of North Mississippi, but the big driver in that forecast has been the dew points because it is returning by the time we reach towards the end of the week. So as we look at dew points right now, not anything impressive. Honestly, where we're getting more of those browns or that sandy color to show up, that's in the 30s to 40s. Definitely not the fuel needed to produce any storms. Definitely not the fuel to produce any strong storms. That would be what we're getting all the way in the Gulf. You see mid to upper 60s expected, and as Matt has mentioned multiple times, that's what's required whenever we're looking a little bit more into one of those severe weather risk days, and that is in place for your Friday. So as we head over the next several days, we're basically getting all of this Gulf moisture that's encompassed by those mid to upper 60s, working its way north into Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas, and of course, right in that severe weather risk threshold that we just saw a moment ago. So as we track this out on future dew points, I have multiple layers on this graphic. And the first one is, of course, dew points, and that's showcased by the numbers as well as this color gradient right here to showcase where that more moisture pushes into the area. The other thing I have overlapped is going to be our futurecast models, and this is the American model, so we do have some questions about it, but it does showcase the positioning with the moisture, and that's what I wanted to showcase to you guys here on the 6 o'clock broadcast. So your Tuesday afternoon, as you can see, dew point's going to be in the upper 40s and low 50s, not exactly anything too impressive to produce any storms. So with that front that's pushing through over our Tuesday and Wednesday, that of course not going to have any storm threat with it. If any moisture is in that front, it's going to be in the form of some light showers. But then we get into the rest of this week, and you can start to see that moisture working its way right along that Mississippi River by 6 o'clock on your Thursday. Where does that line up? Well, it lines up really well with this frontal boundary, that cold front that's moving through Dallas and parts of Little Rock by the time we get into our Thursday afternoon and evening. Now, where that front moves in, with those dew points going to be in the potentially low 60s out there in Louisiana, that's going to be a more primed environment. But let's go ahead and get into North Mississippi. Upper 50s in that forecast. Much different from where we currently sit, so that shows that the moisture is gradually going to return due to those multiple systems working their way through the area. Let's take it hour by hour through your Thursday night. As we build into those overnight hours, this is again our American model, and it is ambitious on those dew points. I think that it is very much on the higher end. I think that mid to upper 50s, mid to upper 60s, not an impossibility, and so this actually, I was confused for a second. It lines up very well. There we go. Low 60s back into the forecast as we get into that midnight hour, lining up right along with that frontal boundary. And as that front works its way through overnight and into our Friday, you can see that moisture still going to be in place. Now, here's where we have some questions about the American model. Look at how all of these showers are starting to be produced overhead on 6 a.m. on your Friday. Much different from where our Euro sits and much different from where the strike model even sat. So tracking out these storms, of course, the American model is going to do a poor job on the representation of that line just because we do believe it is moving way too quickly through the area. Now, as we get through the rest of our Friday, you can see how the American model has this front lingering on through, but whenever we get that big propulsion from that front on the backside, we're talking dew points in the mid-60s. And I do believe mid-60s, not out of the realm of possibilities, and that is enough moisture to produce some storms and potentially some strong storms once this works its way into the rest of Magnolia State, Matt.
Absolutely. You know, and we should be clear, again, this model could potentially, and maybe we should just call it the GFS, you know, on there, but it could potentially be right. We have to recognize that is a possibility. It tends to be, I almost always hedge toward the European at this time frame, especially if I have to choose between the two. They're vastly different. But one thing we're going to be looking at over the next 24 hours is how to run change. Like a new model comes in, is it just a little bit slower? Do we start to see some kind of consensus built? Once we start to see more consensus, obviously confidence increases dramatically on the timing. But there's no question that this projection and most of our projections have at least a decent amount of fuel out there.
And the
that
fuel is
the dew
really...
point.
Yeah, the fuel is what I really want it to be taken from this graphic. I mean, we're talking mid-60s. And mid-60s in January, that is definitely more than enough fuel to produce some of these storms. The thing that we're dealing with right now, and Matt, you mentioned it, is the fuel. That fuel, of course, not going to be overly high or overly indicated by our Kate value, but dew points at least showing there is some instability in that air, allowing for potentially some strong storms to take place. So dew points better represented for our fuel with this system on our Friday. And as we head into our Friday afternoon, of course, that is going to continue to remain in place. And of course, into our Friday evening and overnight hours into our Saturday. But again, GFS not going to be as much of an indicator with that just because it hasn't moving through earlier on in the day. Now, that being said, who do we need to root for? The GFS in this case, because it actually does dial back those threats just a bit because it's happening earlier on in the day. The later in the day you go, the more you let that heating take place. That's where we could get some of these threats as we head into that afternoon time frame.
Absolutely. Something we're going to be watching very, very closely between now and then. Gabe, thank you so much. And as I talk again in a moment here about those threats, we'll get ready. We'll talk a little bit more about some basketball because, believe it or not, Game of the Week is back. That's part of the reason why, with at least a limited chance for some severe weather, we're choosing to do what typically our Mississippi Live Game of the Week, all the way through the fall, with the exception of 1 week, we did that on Fridays. That's going to be the goal for basketball season. And the cool thing about basketball season, I think we'll be doing both girls and boys games over the course of the year. And so we're really excited about that, but we're going to do it on Thursday this week because we have the severe weather threat on Friday. And so that's something to at least keep in mind. But I'm going to bring Gabe back in here because, again, we're trying to get some votes in on that. We've got some votes in on where we go, and we're still waiting on everybody on those nominations. And, again, appreciate Langston a lot and Casey Lott there for sponsoring our Game of the Week once again this year.
For sure. And one of the biggest seasons that I look forward to is basketball season, and it is in full swing right now. So again, a big thank you to the folks at Casey Lott for sponsoring our Mississippi Live Weather Game of the Week. We're going to be heading out to these basketball games, getting some highlights similar to how we did during football season, showcasing the winner here on Mississippi Live Weather, but it doesn't end there. Now we have our Spirit Squad. We also have our band or student section of the week as well. And if the student sections are anywhere near as rowdy as football was, you guys are in for a treat. It was such a fun time being with those students out there, and they get pretty wild whenever you're talking about their teams. But as you can see, a few of our submissions that we have so far, Grady recommending the Prentice County tournament. Of course, I'm biased. My wife is a Blue Devil, so of course I'm rooting for that. But I'm rooting for any basketball, honestly, this time of year. Jeff recommending the Union County tournament. The East Union girls are off to a very hot start to the season, so that'll be a great game to watch as well. And the Alcorn County tournament being recommended by Jimbo there at the bottom. That's going to be Biggersville, Corinth versus Biggersville happening on Thursday as well. That's the only stipulation when we're talking about these games is it does have to be on Thursday. As Matt was mentioning Friday, that severe weather threat. We, of course, are weather first here at Mississippi Live Weather. Makes sense. So we want to be here to keep you guys safe, and hopefully you guys won't have to head out into any of this severe weather as we get into the latter part of this week. But we still wanted to showcase our Game of the Week, and that, of course, happening Thursday night. Matt, I am stoked, excited, however you want to word it. Basketball season is here, and we are ready for it.
It's here, and of course, the Ole Miss game's Thursday night as well. We talked about
Always
that
something.
forecast. There's always something, right? Hopefully, at least there's not severe weather on top of that as well. We thank you so much for joining us here on Mississippi Live Weather at 6. Our next live broadcast is going to come up tonight at 10 o'clock. Our meteorologist, Gabe Maynor, we're going to be watching these. Each time these new models come in, we're looking for consensus. We're looking for the models to try to coalesce around one general idea. And there still remains some question as to what that general idea will be. Gabe will have a much better handle of that at 10 o'clock and over the next couple of days. Keep it here as we continue to track things, and we'll keep you advised.